Let's get ready to mortgage. He is the prince of programs, guru of guidelines, master of matrices. He puts the fun in funding. Please welcome Mark, Mr. Mortgage, I tell.
All right. Hey, guys, my name is Mark Eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. And, guys, you are in the right place. If you've got questions and curiosities, you want the data, the tips, the tricks, the answers to those questions so you can go out and make better real estate and mortgage decisions for you and your family. Guys, we do this each week right here on the Mr. Mortgage Show, and we've got an awesome show lined up for you this week. There was a lot of news released this week, CPI numbers, what is inflation doing, what is really happening with interest rates. Some people are already starting to forecast 2024. And man, I love and hate this time of the year all at the same time because we look back at all of the predictions from the last 3 years and they are so wildly off base that it's hard to take some of these predictions seriously. But we're going to look at some of those and we're going to talk about homeownership. Is it right for anybody in this market where interest rates are and prices? I read an interesting article headlined, "Is 2024 the year of home affordability?" And instantly clicked the headline, started diving through the data because that was a very clickbaity and super enticing headline. And it was interesting because it alludes, right? That headline alludes to some significant changes in the real estate market moving into 2024. The short answer could have been no, but I read all of the data and they were referring to the realtor.com forecasts of interest rates somewhere between 6.5% and 6.8% next year, 2024. And with those lower interest rates, obviously it's more affordable, but the flip side to that is what is it going to do to demand, right? We've been flabbergasted by supply and demand versus interest rates since the pandemic has started to cool and rates started to march upward. But the Realtor.com data anticipates a price drop. Are you ready for this, ladies and gentlemen? This is what's going to trigger all of the affordability in this article, a price drop of 1.7%. Guys, that's meaningless. 1.7%. I mean, that's what's going to trigger affordability. You take any realistic margin of error in this data, and that easily could be a price increase of 2%. So an insignificant price drop, and rental rates forecast to drop 0.2% in 2024 with this data set from Realtor.com. So if you are anticipating significant changes in the real estate landscape as far as affordability is concerned, the data's just not setting up for it. I know everybody is super frustrated with the interest rates, this pesky 7 to 8% range that we've seemed to be kind of comfortably locked into. It's encouraging because we're seeing some of the FHA and VA loan products being quoted in the sixes again, which we talked about over the last couple of weeks. That's definitely spurred some increase in activity, but until oversupply hits the market, there's no downward pressure on prices. So these type of headlines and these talking heads really, really fascinate and frustrate me at the same time. I watched an interview on CNBC with Lawrence Yun, the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors. He too thinks rates are going to be in the sixes next year. They talked a lot about his forecast for activity, and then the interviewer, and forgive me, I don't know his name off the top of my head. I can put it in the Facebook group, but he alluded to the benefit that people experienced in waiting for rates to pull back from 8% to 7.5%, which is what we've seen in the last several weeks. As of us doing the show, that's where this is. If you're listening to the podcast at a later date, that could be a wildly different interest rate. But did anybody really benefit on the surface? If you're borrowing $100,000, you're going to pay less if you're borrowing at a lower interest rate. But was there any opportunity cost? And what I mean by that is during that wait is the property that you wanted to buy still available, and is the price still the same? So I don't think these tiny incremental moves are the difference maker. And I've said it many, many times. If you're waiting for an interest rate to move a quarter of a point before you pull the trigger on something, you probably have no business considering buying at the moment anyway. You know, we talk about it all the time. When the tide is going up or down, the waves crash a little bit higher and a little bit lower during that cycle. So if you're just watching those individual moves, it's hard to see which direction the tide's going in. You watch an incoming tide at the beach, the wave crashes up, it pulls back. Then the next one crashes up a little further, it pulls back a little less. But if you're not looking at that overall gauge and you're just waiting for that pullback to say, okay, the tide must be going down, I'm going to wait. Well, you're going to wait yourself right into a high tide. And we've seen people do that for the last 2 years. And I ask people this question all the time. If interest rate is truly the deciding factor, I shift gears and we talk about the car. Do you like your car? And, you know, a lot of young people have very fancy cars right now. You know, I saw people during the pandemic spending over $100,000 on pickup trucks, which is mind-blowing to me. But, you know, most recently I had a young gentleman apply for a loan, and he had a little over an $800 a month truck payment. And you've heard me use this analogy before. If you haven't, you may find it interesting. But I asked him, do you like your truck? I love my truck. You know, that's the best truck I've ever owned. Okay, so for you, $800 is a fair exchange for the utility or the pleasure that truck gives you. Absolutely. I love, love, love my truck. Okay, great. Hey, just out of curiosity, what interest rate do you have on your truck? I don't know. But my payment is $813.41. They know what their payment is, but they don't know what the interest rate is, because the interest rate wasn't the deciding factor. It was the budget number. Can I afford to pay that each month for what I'm getting out of, in this case, the truck? So, okay, maybe you don't remember the interest rate and you're just, you know, going purely on the payment. How much did you pay out the door? Tax, tag, title, undercoating, the floor mats, all the, you know, things they tack on as you're trying to get the heck out of the dealership. I don't know, but I pay, you know, $813.41 a month. That's my point, guys. In every other major purchase, we look at budget. Can I afford it? And is it a fair exchange of value, monetary value, for utility or pleasure? But when we buy a house, and the ironic thing is that truck is depreciating, it's worth less. And just ask all the people that paid over $100,000 for their trucks during the pandemic. They can't sell or trade them right now and get their money back out of them because they owe more than they're worth, because values have depreciated, and the used car market, the values have come down considerably because of supply and demand. There's that equation again. So I just find it fascinating that the one major purchase that we tend to finance in life, real estate, which historically appreciates, we're making these assumptions that an eighth of a point or a quarter of a point is going to move the needle between it being a good or bad decision. Meanwhile, housing is not an option because you need some place to live unless you're in your mom's basement eating Hot Pockets. So anyway, guys, we are going to dive into all the data this week. We've got an awesome show lined up for you. We are going to take your questions. Jen is standing by, womanning the Anytime hotline, and you can get your questions to her at 855-462-7292. Call or text that number, 855-462-7292, or check out MrMortgageRadio.com. There's a big button on the screen. You can send us your questions that way too. But hey guys, you hear the music, you know what that means. That's my cue. We'll be back in a few. On the other side of this short break, we're going to continue to dive into the data and get to your questions. Sit tight. We'll be right back with more of the Mr. Mortgage Show. Hey, it's Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show, and I'm going to interrupt this commercial break to ask you for a favor. If you know any friends, family, coworkers, or the guy in front of you at the grocery line who's talking or thinking about buying or selling or refinancing real estate, I'm hoping I can count on you to help me spread the word, introduce them to me, to the team. You can do that by simply sharing MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. Guys, it's Mark Eitel, NMLS 1929005. Now, back to the commercials.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right. Hey, guys, it's Mark Eitel here, and this is the Mr. Mortgage Show. We're back. Hey, if you have questions or comments, just call or text 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292. That is the Anytime hotline. And as I mentioned, Jen is womaning the hotline, and she'll get your questions on the air. 855-462-7292, or head over to MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. And right in the middle of the page, mixed in amongst all of the awesome resources that we talk about each week on the show, is a big orange button that says get your questions on the air. If you click that button, you can shoot your questions directly to Jen, and she will read them on the air for you. But hey, guys, during that first segment, I talked about supply and demand and where we are right now, interest rate wise. We're not seeing significant downward pressure on pricing. And if you listen to the show, you know I'm a big fan of the benefits of real estate. I mean, in my life, I grew up in a family of home builders. I originally got in the mortgage business in the late 90s, in real estate in the very early 2000s, lived through the crash barely. I mean, I looked like a victim of some of those fight scenes in Game of Thrones, but came through all of that with what I believe to be a better understanding and a more realistic view of what opportunity and opportunity costs, as well as some overzealous forecasting can do to somebody who's just blindly chasing real estate. But it was an interesting time. So I mix all of that in the kettle and brew it up, and that's where I kind of glean some of this insight from. But I'm a big fan of owning your home. And we've talked about it many, many times. And we see all of the data supporting it, right? Homeowners traditionally have significantly more wealth that they've accumulated in their life than renters at almost any stage of ownership, by the way. So we're not talking about somebody who's owned their whole life, because yes, they have built significant equity wealth. And equity gives you so much opportunity. You can go home each night and do nothing other than live your life and pay your mortgage payment. And it's like a forced savings account. In rapidly appreciating and slow appreciating environments, you're still paying down your principal. And I've seen families benefit from pulling equity out to forego student loans and pay for their kids' college, or to invest in rental properties and use that equity to create additional streams of income, or pay off debt, or in some cases, unforeseen medical expenses. All of that happened because they owned a home. And that's why I get so excited about it. I'm not a fan of all of the super speculative, crazy, creative this. And, I think some of that's dangerous. But I also think that homeownership is not for everybody, just like marriage isn't for everybody. There's that 40-year-old guy at happy hour at the end of the bar, chain smoking Marlboros, drinking, whatever his cocktail of choice is, choking on handfuls of peanuts and, cocktail crackers, whatever's in that little bin there in the bar, bathed in Axe body spray. That guy's a forever bachelor. He's not marriage material. And some people just aren't ready for the responsibility of homeownership, because for all of the benefits, just like relationships, you see the surveys out there that show that, married people traditionally live longer, happier lives. Well, try to tell that to a single person who's out there, in the VIP with bottle service on a Friday or Saturday night. That guy thinks he's got the world by the behind. So I'm not trying to change people's mind. What I'm trying to do is give you the answers to the questions and the insight so you can make better decisions when you're ready to make that decision. So I just wanted to get that out of the way, because I do get accused of being a zealot and sometimes a bit of a Pied Piper. And I'm excited about the opportunity that it can create. And, I just have a heart to help people get there. So anyway, I wanted to get that out of the way. Hey, speaking of a heart to help, I want to dive into some of your questions. So Jen, if you are ready, go ahead and throw me a question.
Liam sent this one. I am a Swedish citizen and wonder if I can buy an investment home with a U.S. mortgage. I intend to list it as an Airbnb.
Wow, that's a great question. And Jen, say that fast. Swedish citizen? That did not roll off the tongue, right? Hey, Liam, great question. Yes, there are many, many U.S. mortgage products available to foreign nationals, as well as people at varying stages through the visa process. So whether you're becoming a citizen or not, there are opportunities to buy real estate in the U.S. with a U.S.-based mortgage. And guys, if you think we've got crazy interest rates, right? If you think 7 or 8% is high, look at some of the international interest rates. I mean, Turkey just raised their overnight rate to 40% from 35%. I mean, wow. And I know a very, very successful broker who owns a brokerage in Istanbul who is still representing buyers and sellers. So if you had the choice of borrowing money there or here, I get it. That here makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. Liam, there are definitely opportunities for you, my man. You should anticipate paying somewhere between 20 and 30% down payment. And you're going to have a slightly higher interest rate than the advertised conventional rate, but it might be far, far lower than the other options on the international side. And it's quite an easy process, especially as you mentioned, it's going to be Airbnb because the income generated from the rental, even the projected income, can be used as the income piece when evaluating your debt to income ratio. So we do it all the time. We do it a lot for Canadian citizens, actually, but happy to help if you need somebody. And the answer to your question is yes, there are options available to you. Guys, one thing I just want to throw out there is there are often options available and you'll never know unless you ask. You know, for example, I mentioned the varying stages of immigration. And one of the first things, if you're going to work and earn money in the U.S., that you're assigned is an ITIN, an individual taxpayer identification number, ITIN. That's in place of your social security number because until you're a citizen, you don't get a social security number. But if you're going to earn money and pay taxes in the U.S., you need an ITIN. Well, with an ITIN, you have a variety of mortgage programs available to you. So a lot of people think, okay, I'm going through the process. I'm not yet a citizen. I'm in the dreamer category. We see a lot of this in Arizona and in Florida and Texas. We have these conversations. Guys, oftentimes there are opportunities available to you. You just have to start the conversation and welcome the opportunity to have that conversation with anybody who's curious. And the cool thing about some of these programs that we just talked about, and the one in particular with Liam, is we're not even underwriting the income. In some instances, we're looking at international credit reports that don't even really meet our models, but there's still opportunity with some of these loan programs, primarily what are called non-QM loans. So great question. And guys, if you take anything away from that, don't take the first no or don't assume no is the answer until you dive deep with somebody. But Liam, I appreciate that question, my man. Hey, Jen, oh, no, I hear the music. No time for another question. Hey, guys, you hear the music? You know what that means? That's my cue. We'll be back in a few. Sit tight on the other side of this very short break. We'll be back with more of the Mr. Mortgage Show. Hey, it's Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show, and I'm going to interrupt this commercial break to ask you for a favor. If you know any friends, family, coworkers, or the guy in front of you at the grocery line who's talking or thinking about buying or selling or refinancing real estate, I'm hoping I can count on you to help me spread the word, introduce them to me, to the team. You can do that by simply sharing MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. Guys, it's Mark Eitel, NMLS 1929005. Now, back to the commercials.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel, and you are tuned in to the Mr. Mortgage Show. And you heard the man. If you have questions or comments, just call or text 855-462-7292. That is the Anytime Hotline. Jen is womanning the hotline, and she will get your questions on the air. Again, that number is 855-462-7292. Or head over to MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com, and right in the middle of the page is a big button. You can't miss it. It says get your questions on the air. Just click that button, and Jen will take it from there and read your questions on the air for you. Hey, but speaking of your questions, I know we've got a couple back there because I went a little long with Liam's question. So let me throw it over to Jen and get through some of these questions. Go ahead, Jen.
Terry emailed this. I've heard rents are flattening. If this trend continues, do you think housing prices will start to fall? I mean, if it's cheaper to rent, won't that make a difference?
Hey, Terry, this is a great question, and I appreciate your insight. You are definitely paying attention. Maybe, and it depends on how big that gap is between cheaper to rent than own. But what we traditionally see is rents come up instead of home prices come down, because home prices, as we talked about many times, are governed by supply and demand, not necessarily the alternative choice. Now, if the alternative choice becomes so appealing that there is no longer any demand, then yes, that would create an oversupply and maybe drive prices down. But we just talked about it in the opening segment. The forecast for rent declines next year are 0.2%. That's not a significant savings. And what I mean by what normally happens is the rent prices come up is you've got to think about it from the landlord's point of view. The landlord's property taxes are based on their value. That value is based on market conditions. And unlike a homesteaded residence, that value resets every tax year. So if they've experienced a 40% increase in values over this upswing, their taxes are marching up every year that property is reassessed. That market value is reestablished. Well, guys, we all see the headlines talking about insurance rates are so much higher. Part of the problem with the insurance rates, in addition to the hurricane regions and the fire regions, part of the problem in addition to that is the cost to rebuild these structures and the values of these structures and the insurance requirements that the lenders have. It has to be insured at full replacement cost or mortgage amount, whichever's less. Those numbers are increasing. You couple all of that with a lot of these big landlords have interest-only debt that is coming due and will be refinanced at higher interest rates. Their costs of ownership are going up significantly. That gets passed to the tenant. So I am not convinced that there's significant downward pressure on rents across the board. With all of that being said, so great question. Super insightful. And my answer is maybe. We'll just have to wait and see. But I take it all the way back to that opening segment in the budget number. If the budget number works for you, then you may want to seriously consider making a move. So great question, though. I appreciate it. Hey, Jen, throw me another question.
Manny sent us a text. I own a boat detailing company and make decent money. I don't claim much on my taxes, though. Can I use your bank statement loan and a down payment grant together?
Hey, Manny, this is a fantastic question. I appreciate you bringing this one up. So the bank statement loan, for anybody out there who's curious, is an alternative income verification loan. And we use the bank statement loan for this exact scenario. Manny's self-employed. He doesn't claim very much income on his tax returns, but we can look at his average monthly deposits and see that he's making money. That bank statement loan is a great alternative for people in this scenario. The challenge is that there are no grant programs that I'm aware of. Now, that being said, Manny, we'll dive deep when we get off the air. If I find one, I'll shoot you the information. But all of the grant programs that I'm aware of couple with either an FHA loan or one of the conventional home ready style loans, which require traditional income documentation. So in this case, it's an either or. It's not a both scenario. So I would encourage you, however, though, to have your tax returns underwritten, because oftentimes the self-employed borrower is unaware of what expenses can be added back to your returns for your income calculations. And when I say that, we're not talking about refiling your returns, although that's an option also. But if you refile your returns with higher income, now you're paying higher taxes. However, sometimes that makes sense to go that extent if your goal is to buy the house. But what I'm talking about is some of the depreciations and the quote unquote paper expenses can be added back into that income number. And you might be surprised to find that you qualify even with your CPA or accountant slapping your taxes around before they turn them into the IRS. So brilliant question. I greatly appreciate it. I hope that helps. Hey, Jen, throw me another one.
Shelley has this question. I'm not sure how to ask this. I'm trying to buy a home on a shared well. The well serves 5 homes. My bank says this makes it impossible for me to get a mortgage and that paying cash is my only option. Is this true?
Hey, Shelley, this is another great question. You guys are bringing the oddities and the obscure this week. It's interesting because the shared well thing is rare and it gets a lot of people wrapped around the axle. The big thing with the shared well is you have to have access to the well if it's not on your property. So if it's on someone else's property and you don't have legal access to the well for maintenance issues or inspection issues, then yes, your bank is right. But if it's a shared well and you have legal access to the well, so imagine it's in the middle of the 5 properties and there's legal egress to all 5 properties to that well, then that would meet the guidelines for a conventional loan program and your bank would be wrong. So you will definitely need to make sure that you have legal, physical access to that well. If that's the case, then you should be able to get a conventional mortgage on the property. I hope that helps. Hey, Jen, can we squeeze in one more?
Teresa wants to know. A month or so ago, I heard you sharing a strategy about buying a house for our children and renting it until they're able to buy. I searched through your past shows, but can't find it. Can you explain this again?
Hey, Teresa, thank you so much for first looking through the past show library. And guys, you can find that at mrmortgageradio.com. Just scroll to the bottom of the page. If you can't get enough of Jen and I on the air each week, there's, 130, 40, 50 episodes up there. So yeah, just listen until your heart's content. Teresa, this is a great question. What I was talking about, and I alluded to that earlier in the show, right? This is the exciting part of equity because it gives you opportunities. You could pull some of the equity out of your current home that you live in, use it as a down payment on a rental property. Now, all you've done is shift the equity from one home to another, so you still essentially have that equity. It's just now in the rental property. And then use the landlord loan, which doesn't require your personal income to be underwritten, to qualify to buy the rental property, and then put a tenant in that property until your child's ready to buy. And then you can sell them the property and use the gift of equity strategy to minimize or completely reduce their out-of-pocket expenses. And you can take a profit at that time if there's enough equity in the deal. So we call it the First Home Layaway Program. And I'm happy to discuss it in detail with anybody who's interested. But that's basically it. But if it's something that you're serious about and you want more information, just shoot us an email or shoot us a text and I'll put some bullet points together and kind of walk you through the step-by-step. But that's the gist of it. Hey, thanks for that one. Man, every time I get on a roll, I hear that music creep up in my headphones. I'm long-winded today. Hey guys, you hear the music? You know what that means? That's my cue. We'll be back in a few. Sit tight on the other side of this very short break. We'll be back with more of your questions and more of the Mr. Mortgage Show. Hey, it's Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show, and I'm going to interrupt this commercial break to ask you for a favor. If you know any friends, family, coworkers, or the guy in front of you at the grocery line who's talking or thinking about buying or selling or refinancing real estate, I'm hoping I can count on you to help me spread the word, introduce them to me, to the team. You can do that by simply sharing MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. Guys, it's Mark Eitel, NMLS 1929005. Now, back to the commercials.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we're back. My name is Mark Eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. I am joined, as always, by Jen, my producer, and she is womanning the Anytime Hotline, and she will get your questions on the air. You can call or text your questions to 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292, affectionately known as the Anytime Hotline. Again, 855-462-7292, or head over to MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com, and you can't miss that big orange button right in the middle of the screen that says Get Your Questions on the Air. Just click that button, type in your question, and Jen will take it from there. That's at MrMortgageRadio.com. But I know we've got some questions. I think we could squeeze in some more. If you guys have them, shoot them over. But let's get what we have on the board taken care of. So, Jen, throw me another question.
Matt sent this email. I'm recently divorced, and until 2022, my company was in my ex-wife's name. We put the company in my name in 2022. The bank is telling me I can't count the time my wife owned the company, and I have to wait until I have 2 years of ownership before I can get a mortgage. Do you have any suggestions?
Hey, Matt. Wow. The tangled webs we weave when we're in love, right? I've seen this before, actually, a lot in the service and contracting space where having the business owned by the wife qualifies for minority bidding status. So interesting dilemma that you're in. The short answer is you've got a ton of options. We would just have to dig through them to see if any of them would meet your needs. So your bank's not wrong. There are loan programs that are going to require you to have 2 years of self-employment. And I'm guessing you either owned very little or none of the company, and that's where the challenge is coming in, or at least the time that your wife owned it, you owned a small amount or none of the company. So if your bank is trying to qualify you with one of the programs that need the 2 years, then yes, you're stuck. But there are programs that require only 1 year of self-employment if you can demonstrate your experience in the field. And assuming that you ran the company when it was in your wife's name, then you would meet that requirement. This is assuming that you're just trying to get a standard purchase mortgage and not something like a construction loan or something of that nature, because there are different requirements. The bank statement loan program may work as well. So to answer your question, there are definitely options, but I would need to know a lot more about A, your personal financial scenario, and B, what your goals are. And probably more importantly, what your goals are, because we can work backward from there and just lay out the requirements. And, you could very easily see if that would work for you. So great question. I appreciate it. And I hope I can help. If you need any further information or you want to jump on a call, just actually visit MrMortgageRadio.com, and all our contact info is there. So I appreciate the question, though. I hope that helps. My answer is that there are options. I would just need to discuss the scenario in a little more detail before we could kind of flush out some of those options. So I appreciate it. Hey, Jen, throw me another one.
Carla used the website. We're buying a house on 10 acres. The seller used the property as a horse training facility. They live there too, but because of the training, my realtor says we need a business loan. We don't plan on running it as a business and wonder if there are any other options.
Okay, so again, Amazing, amazing questions this week. You guys are out on the fringe, right? These aren't the traditional, do I qualify for a down payment grant question? So I love this. I love this. And I'm buying time while I'm thinking this one through. So you mentioned that they lived there too. So I'm assuming it was their primary, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they ran the training on the same property, right? They ran a full-fledged commercial training facility. Now, where I'm from in Florida, that's not uncommon. There are several equestrian areas, Jupiter Farms, Loxahatchee, Wellington in particular, where you see a big, beautiful residence and a full-fledged commercial facility on the same 5, 10, 15, 20 acre properties. Now, here's the thing. Assuming that the zoning is for residential primary residence, let's assume for a minute that that's the case, right? Because the current owners lived there as their primary. Then you could or you should be able to qualify with a traditional purchase mortgage, residential mortgage, if big underline, if none of the business operations are being included in the value. And what I mean by that is you can have the rings and the dressage ring and use it for your personal use and not include any of the income generation from the business side of things into the value of the property. And we've done this before, guys. I mentioned some areas that this is not unusual. Then your agent is incorrect and you could qualify. Now, if the zoning is for business only, then they are correct in that case, and you would need to consider a business loan. So again, one of those that I can kind of answer in generalities, but we would need to know a little bit more information. But I would move forward knowing that there's a strong likelihood that you can get a traditional residential mortgage on the property, assuming that you don't need the value of the income generated from the business side of things, as long as it appraises on its own as a residential property with no business activity. That's where I'm going with that. So great question. I hope it helps. Hey, Jen, do we have another? Okay, go ahead.
Robin called this one in. My husband is still on his ex-wife's mortgage. She pays it on time, but I'm wondering if this will affect us when we apply for a mortgage on our home.
Hey, Robin, great question. Triple great question of the day. So this is why I dislike the divorce structure that has both people still on the mortgage and only one person owning the property or on the deed, right? Because your husband, his credit is affected by anything that happens with that mortgage. And who knows, in the divorce decree, he may be required to pay that mortgage. I don't know that. But in that case, then, well, no, you mentioned she pays it on time, so we do know that. So I'm just not a fan of that. It makes for potentially a sticky situation. If she finds out that you're moving forward, she may be resentful and purposely miss a mortgage payment just to try to screw you guys up. But let's assume that's not happening. You said she's paying it on time. You would need to be able to document that she's the one that pays the mortgage. And that typically involves 12 months worth of her bank statements showing that the mortgage is coming out of her account and that it's paid on time. If that's the case, then it won't affect you negatively because it won't be included in your husband's debt to income. Now, with all of that being said, if he's paying it anyway, then it's a non-issue. So I don't think you have a problem on your hands as long as she's willing to help document the fact that she pays it and she's paying it on time and it hasn't negatively impacted your husband's credit. You should be in good shape. So I hope that helps. Guys, if you don't own the asset, you shouldn't own the debt. We talk about it all the time, and this is a prime example. So great question, though, Robin. I appreciate it. Hey, Jen, toss me another.
This one is from Carolyn. If we use the 3-2-1 buy-down mortgage and refinance it early, say in 2 years, do we lose the cost of the final year's buy-down? I hope that makes sense.
Man, I don't know what's in the water today, but you guys are asking the very best question. So with a 3-2-1 buy down, it's really not a buy down. It's a payment subsidy. So if you want to learn more about it, go to 321buydown.com, all spelled out. There's a little explainer video I put there and walks you through it. It's actually a payment subsidy, not a buy down. And because of that, the savings, if you will, or the cost of the buy down is held in an escrow account for the buyer to subsidize the payment for, in this case, the first 3 years. So if you refinance after 2 years, whatever's remaining in that subsidy account or that buy down account is taken off your payoff. So your refinanced amount is going to be less because that escrow is deducted from your payoff. Same if you sell it. If you sell it early, your payoff is reduced by what's in that escrow account. But brilliant, brilliant question. Man, you guys are not missing a beat this week. Man, I am thoroughly impressed with you guys this week. Great, great questions. I swear we got the best listeners. Oh no, I hear the music. I was going to see if we could squeeze in another question, but guys, you know what that music means. We have wrapped up another week of the Mr. Mortgage Show. Man, oh man, time flies when they give me a mic and they let me hop in the studio here with Jen. We love doing the show for you each week. Hey, if you need us during the week, head over to MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. All my contact information is there. The Anytime Hotline, all the stuff we talk about each week. Guys, if you need us, we're here and happy to help. MrMortgageRadio.com. All right, guys, Jen and I will be back next week right here. Same time, same station. You guys have an awesome week.
That's a wrap. Join Mark Eitel next week for more thrilling, edge-of-your-seat discussions about real estate and mortgages right here on The Mr. Mortgage Show.